I'm going to be talking about how we stop chattering away on social media and randomly posting random stuff, but really looking at unearthing our uniqueness on social media so that we can really amplify our messages and make that connection with our audience. So I've got expert here, Gail Booth, who's going to be talking us through this from the business booth. I'm Bex from Social Media Executive, and I train businesses how to effectively use social media. And you will find me live every Monday at 12:30, sharing lots of tips and advice on social media. And myself and Gail met a couple of months ago, and I just went, Gail, you need to come and join me on one of my live streams and really share your wisdom. So go on, Gail, introduce yourselves and tell us what you do.
Thanks, Bex. So I'm Gail Booth. I started out my career as a marketeer way back in the 1980s. So I have literally been doing it that long. And I grew my skill set from marketing into business development, and then into leading businesses. So now I consult small to medium-sized businesses on their growth strategies and plans, really helping people to take the stress out of running a business and save them time, energy, heck of a lot of stress and money doing the wrong things by getting really effective.
Yeah, something that I think we all need, certainly as business owners, because you can end up juggling too much stuff, and before you know it, you're spending time on the wrong things in the business, aren't you?
You wear so many hats, and even the act of taking a hat off and putting a new one on takes time, and we've only got a finite amount of time.
Yeah. So essential services that every business juggler needs, as I call them. So Gail, you're going to run through today then, aren't you? We're going to be talking about really how can we use our uniqueness on social media to really sort of amplify our messages and really, I think it's about getting seen, because social media is such a competitive area these days, with everybody sort of jumping on the bandwagon, businesses trying to promote themselves. But you're going to share today some tips, aren't you, on how we can actually be a little bit more visible by being a bit more strategic.
I am indeed. I'm going to talk about really creating your unique value proposition. So it's a fundamental business foundation that, in my experience, probably 90% of businesses don't even have one, or they have one by osmosis.
Yeah. So should we jump in? Yeah, we'll jump in. Shall I? Let's. Oh, there we go. Let's share our screen.
Great. So I'm going to talk about how you can stop chattering on social media, and if by unearthing your uniqueness, you can amplify your messages. So let's dive right in. As I said at the intro, I've been in marketing and selling for over 30 years. So as a stereotypical analog marketer, I did my degree even before the dawn of the internet. And so it's been fascinating to observe the changes, both positive and otherwise, that it's had on society and also buying decisions and processes. And I think it's fair to say there have been a few, not many, but pretty seismic shifts. For example, pre-social media, there were very few communication channels. 4 TV channels. Well, actually, I'm old enough to remember just the 3. Few newspapers, magazines, controlled by only a handful of people. But now we're open source, and it's also unchecked and unverified, and literally everyone is on Transmit. So take LinkedIn alone, it's the most successful B2B channel, and the numbers are mind-blowing. So 1 billion members, 200 countries, 67 million companies, and over, and this blew my tiny brain, 1 billion interactions every month. The noise is quite simply deafening, and our brains are struggling to cope with this. So it does beg the question, when everybody is on Transmit, how on earth do you get people to listen to you? Well, here's a hint. It isn't about following the crowd. It's about standing out and being loud and being proud.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the mistakes people make, isn't it? They go, oh, so-and-so's doing it, I should be doing it. That's not the
My
case, is it?
biggest gripe is where you see people on social media going, follow this hack, follow my instant strategy for 7 figures. It's a nonsense. They're unverified. And the reality of it is, if you follow somebody else, you're not going to create that uniqueness. So I've just got 2 rules for this. And rule number 1 is, it ain't about you. It's actually about your customers. And so let's just pick an example to work that one through. So we all go and get our hair cut, right? I mean, mine's desperately in need of one right now. When you go to the hairdressers, what is it you want to buy? Do you want to buy a cut and colour? Do you want to buy just a regular haircut, a trim? You don't actually. You kind of do want that. You want that as an outcome, but it's so much more. So, for example, maybe you're wanting your hairdressers to make you feel fabulous, to give you that extra boost of confidence, perhaps for a hot day or that wedding or special party that you've got lined up. Or maybe it's just to have a pamper and much needed time out from your busy schedule. Or maybe you're like Mabel, it's the one time in the week, every week, that she gets to have a chat with other ladies. Or perhaps you could be like a mayor who feel you've earned it, and you want to go to the best flipping hairdresser in the Northwest because you believe you will feel better and you believe you will look better, you will be better if only you go to that salon rather than the one on the corner. The list goes on, but you can see how it's so much more than just a haircut.
It's funny.
So, yes.
I was in Plymouth when I was living in Plymouth, my favouriteest hairdresser ever. And she was brilliant because she knew I just liked to sit in silence. And she very gently massaged my head when she was washing it, cut my hair, and she knew I liked to sit in silence.
And yet some people go for the chatter, and everybody's different, and that's the key. So the key that you've just touched on there, Bex, is resonance. Your hairdresser resonated with what you needed. And we're going to talk a lot more about resonance as we sort of carry on through this conversation. And there's actually an equation that can be used. So for the maths geeks out there, remember Fry. Some people might think about Friday to remember it. I prefer to think of a bag of chips, being a proper northerner. So FRI, F times by R equals I. Frequency times by resonance equals impact. So let's just look at how people buy, to unpick my point about resonance. I'm a geek about how psychology and the brain works. I absolutely love it. And did you know we actually have 2 brains?
2 brains?
We've got 2 brains. One is our logical brain and the other one is our somatic brain.
Okay.
Now, sometimes referred to as the fast brain and the slow brain. The somatic brain is your fast brain. It works 1,000,000 times faster than your logical processing brain, because if you think about it, logic, you've got a step by step, so by its very nature is much slower. So it's often referred to as the gut instinct as well.
Okay.
But your somatic brain keeps your your somatic brain is an absolute demigod. It keeps your entire system working. It's how you blink without thinking, you breathe without thinking, your heart beats without thinking. But it also rapidly processes threats and opportunities, that basic fight or flight instinct. So right back to our caveman days, it was spotting and filtering threats. Do I run or do I stand my ground? Is there anything that I need to get out of here quickly? But obviously, these days, it's not fighting your average saber-tooth tiger. It's more concerned with scanning and filtering out the relevant from the irrelevant to us.
Okay.
And that goes back to those billion interactions that you see on that earlier slide. And this is a really, really important point. it's what is unique to us. So your brain's not filtering out, is this relevant to society? Is this relevant to this? It's a bit more selfish than that. Is it relevant to me? And that's why, you know, how many of us sat there and endlessly scrolled at the front end or back end of the day, and you're like, oh, that's your brain, your somatic brain kicking in and going, relevant, whoa, stop and have a look. And that's how that works.
Yeah.
So if you remember the hairdressing example that we just talked about, don't try to make your messages reach everyone. Hey, look at me, I'm the best hairdresser in the Northwest. You have to talk to Mabel and talk to Maya. They've got two very different requirements, even though they both want their hair done. But you just talk to them differently and in a different way. So if your hairdresser said to you, oh, come in, Bex, on a Saturday, it's going to be buzzing and happening, you'd be like, no, thanks, I can't go. It's not going to attract to you. And if you take that earlier on in the buying process, then you wouldn't even get past that millisecond. Is it relevant? Is it not relevant? You won't get past the somatic brain before you get to the logical brain and the processing. Now, most businesses don't, as I said, don't even know how to build a value proposition, let alone a unique one. And at best, they'll have an inkling, they'll have an idea, and this is how we do it here. But it is teachable, and it is worth investing time and energy doing this, because I can guarantee you, if you go back to that equation, it will dramatically shift how you engage with your customers. So all that effort you put into that engagement on a weekly basis or even a daily basis, communicating with them will have much greater impact. So we know how the brain filter work. Let's look at step 2. Let's think about how we buy. And you can see from that image there, we buy with our head and our hearts. So to emphasize this point, I always think it's really useful to look at buying a house. It's probably the biggest, scariest purchase you'll ever make. My sister's buying one at the minute, and it's the first time at 53 she's ever bought a house on her own, so she's plain terrified.
Yeah.
She has it set in her mind's eye, the type of house she wants, the space, the long list of must-haves, this, that, and the other. Might be bedrooms, might be kitchen, might be a secure south-facing garden. These are all her thinks. She's thought that through. Her slow brain is rational. I want this for these reasons, and so on. And then she might go on a load of visits and do tons of them, and none are quite right, too big, too small, not facing the right way, Goldilocks, you know, all that kind of stuff. Now think about watching Escape to the Country. I love trash telly. That's one of my secret guilty pleasures. So I
love Escape to the Country. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
Think about how many people actually buy the mystery house. Virtually all the time. I would say probably 7 times out of 10 they opt for the mystery house, something like that. And that's because, and it falls short of the needs. So it might be a semi when they've said, absolutely, we'll not entertain a semi. It's got to be a detached. Or always remember a lovely barn conversion down in Oxford that fit that criteria. But they think with their heart, and they go and they see it and they fall in love. And so despite the fact that it doesn't meet that full list of needs that they clearly defined, they buy it anyway, because they're head over heels in love with what they want. They want it. Yeah, I want that new kitchen. I want that new Gucci bag. I want that whatever. But if you're thinking about the house, that's what they want. That is proof right there of the thinks and feels contradicting themselves. And it's a really good example that the feels are way, way, way more powerful than the needs, the thinks. The thinks can be flexible. The feels most certainly won't be. You got it or you don't.
Yeah.
That feels or you don't. So it's useful to bear that in mind when you're thinking about what it is you're offering. And it doesn't matter whether it's hairdressers and architects or buying a house. We all think that way. It's the way our brains process. So step 3, when you're defining your value proposition, is to think about hopes, fears, and needs. And again, this is the same regardless of what industry or product or service you're selling. So in the case of an extension, doing your kitchen extension, Marcy might want a new extension to a kitchen, which is the need, because she hopes that it will improve the way in which her family lives in the house and be more connected. So the design of that extension needs to play to those hopes, not just, well, it's 4 meters by 4 meters and it's a square box. She might also want to maximize the potential value of the house because she'd like a bigger one in a few years. That's a hope. But you can turn that into a, so we will do it this way. She might also secretly hope that she'll make her neighbours absolutely green with envy. So having the designs and giving her stuff that she can brag about is, you know, again, something that you can build into your value proposition. But if you think about it, crucially, she's never had an extension previously, and she's worried it'll cost a fortune and she'll make a mistake. So an enlightened architect might introduce virtual reality to show her how that extension could look, thereby reducing that fear. And if you never, this is going to sound a bit weird and a bit stalkerish, but never underestimate the power of fear. As humans, we've got a basic psychological, it's called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And one of the base foundations there is this need to feel safe. And if you don't feel safe, you're not going to buy, you're not going to move, you're not going to make that decision.
Yeah.
So making sure, and it's not about preying on people's fears. I think that's morally wrong, but it is about taking the time to consider the thoughts and the feelings that people will have to go through in that buying decision. You know, I'm going to get my hair chopped and cut right up here. My God, it's going to take me 4 years to grow it this long again. Oh, I'm a bit scared. It's the job of the proposition holder, owner, to think about those fears and make sure that in their service and in their approach that they are building in things that naturally address those concerns, like the VR in the head in the headset. So in the case of a large commission like building a new railway, I spent 18 months tendering for High Speed 2. That project team are terrified. So yeah, the project needs to be delivered on time and to budget, and it's a bit like childbirth on that. Like doing an extension, absolute pain. You see people at the start of grand designs where they're, you know, young and full of spirits, and at the end of it, we're busy developing at the minute. You're like that, and they're worn out. And you forget the real pain on the journey of the buying and the building. We're particularly on a long-term solution. But buying groups, when they're doing large commissions like that, are actually terrified of getting dragged in front of ministers, in front of an inquiry that's televised and their name getting dragged through the mud and that. So fear plays a large part, and you need to take steps to give them assurances and guarantees that their fear won't materialise. So by considering hopes, fears and needs, you can develop a much more rounded proposition that really talks to your target customer.
And actually speeds up, doesn't it, that buying process then, doesn't it? Because
it does.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it does beg the question then, well, that's all well and good, great theory, but how do I figure out my uniqueness? And I find it's often best, because we're very British, and I do this myself, you know, when you've got to talk about yourself, it's like somebody shoving a camera in my face. I get this involuntary urge to go, and we find it very difficult to do it for ourselves. So it's often best done on a guided, facilitated conversation for somebody to join the dots for you. But you can do it yourself, and literally it's no more complicated than asking yourself a bunch of questions and doing it in a mind map. Now, Simon Sinek did this whole TED talk, which I absolutely love, about what makes a great leader. And he talks about starting with the why. And I fundamentally believe that thought process for leadership is grounded in value propositions. So again, as humans, we find it really, really comfortable and dead easy to talk about what do we do? I cut hair for a living. How do we do it? Well, I've got my own salon and I employ 20 people and it's got a great buzz about it. And on a Fridays, we have a quiet day where people that want quiet haircuts can come in and get that done, blah, blah,
where
blah.
I come,
Exactly. But they rarely get to the why. They rarely get to the Mabel or the mayor. And by figuring that out, you can then anticipate that and then use that in your marketing communication. And so if you answer all of these questions, what markets do I serve? So it absolutely, you have to look at it from the eyes of your customers. What you sell is frankly irrelevant. It's who you sell it to and what their needs are. So what's important to them? You know, you're a lady with lovely long hair, but you want peace and quiet when you go to a hairdresser's. I'm the same. That I don't like going to a hairdresser's. It's functional for me. So if they faff about and leave me sat there for hours, it drives me nuts. We're all different, you know. And so you've got to think about what markets do I serve and get really, really, really specific. And what are the outcomes for them? So, you know, you and I both want a haircut, but you want an hour apiece and you want a great haircut. I want speed and I want a great haircut.
Yeah.
And think about how do we do it for them? How do you bring your offer? So what are the things that sit around your offer? And how does this help them? Well, I don't have to tie my hair up in a ponytail. I don't have to spend an hour doing it. You know, that hair analogy just goes on and on and on because everybody can identify with it because we all get it done. But crucially, ask yourself, why do I serve them? Because, you know, we've got a choice. I'm in business to choose the customers that I want to deal with these days. So I can choose to say no if I don't want to do it. And having a purpose, I really want to help these types of customers for this reason really does then get into they help you resonate with your target customers. And when you've documented all that in your mind map, then you flip it and you actually start at the center. You start with the why and work your way out. And that is just a really, really easy little tip to trick your mind to really keep focused on the customers, because often you keep coming back to, but this is what I do, because it's easier. But if you keep starting with the why and think about it from the customer's perspective, you get a much stronger value proposition. So you've got a value proposition. Rule number 2. I'm gonna rock Mr. T without all the jewellery and all the other paraphernalia.
Well, Paul's just said he's bald anyway, so he wants something completely different from a haircut anyway.
Paul, I'm sure you maybe got a beard going off. It's very trendy these days. You can rock that same analogy, but there ain't no point fitting in full. So. And again, as human beings, we're conditioned to fit in and not make waves. And the cancel culture has actually heightened that human need to belong. Again, back to that fear. We fear being excluded. We fear being cancelled. There's a new telly programme starting that's all about a presenter getting cancelled. And social media has driven a massive increase to homogenisation. But to stand out, you need to be strikingly different, like that image shows. So let's go back and take a fresh look at your mind map and look at what you do that is different or better. And when answering that why, make sure it's from the customer's perspective only, because no one cares. And I'm going to repeat that. Literally nobody cares. Yeah. And that sounds harsh. Nobody cares if you spent thousands of pounds on that fancy piece of kit. What they do care about is what it's going to do for them. So in a noisy world, you've got to stand out. And so you've really got to be brave, and it's got to resonate with your audiences. So now you've got your mind map, you can start taking a fresh look at that, at what you're posting, bringing out your uniqueness from a customer's perspective so that you'll have more impact, which will mean more engagement, which will mean more sales, back to that fry analogy. So I did this recently with a personal trainer client of mine. So, you know, switch from hairdressers to personal trainers to people purchasing high speed too. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of personal trainers out there. There's a ton of them in every gym. So for Katie, what really did start with her was what market she serves and why. And together we figured out that her sweet spot was actually clients, mainly female, that were going through a personal battle. So they weren't there gym bunnies going, you know, I want a peachy bum, or, you know, I want to have a 18-inch waist. There were new mums, there were menopausal women, or even older people that were struggling with mobility. So for her, it was about insight, not inches. And these social groups for her are conditioned to take up less space, both physically and societally, making them feel unseen, unheard, and really unworthy. And so through her training, she makes them feel seen, she builds their confidence, she makes them feel vibrant and valued, and she allows them to take control. So it was about support and not slavery to the gym, which is a very different proposition from, you know, somebody pumping iron with a weight.
And her clients will feel much more comfortable with that as well, won't they?
Exactly. So is she going to get all the clients that come into her gym? Absolutely not, because there will be those, you know, young 20-somethings that are still chasing after that perfect body. But she gets probably 90% of the clients that fit her target audience. And she's a different kind of PT for people who are reluctant gym goers. And what she's drawing on is her own remarkable journey. So she's been there and done that, and she can empathise with people that are going through those struggles. And she has the skills and knowledge to help support them. So she's not just another ripped PT instructor who sets unattainable or unrealistic goals. And that's really how to create a unique value proposition in what can be described as a very homogenised market. So top 5 takeaways really are: look at everything through your customer's lens and not yours. For goodness sake, stand out and dare to be different. Remember that people buy with their hearts as well as their minds. And when you communicate, and start with the why, then the how, and then the what. So do it in reverse. It's a bit like patting your head and rubbing your tummy. It feels alien, but the more you do it, the more you get used to doing it. And then be really, really clear on the value that you add, because you will add different value in the way in which you do things, and make sure that you've unearthed that. So if you'd like more help to create your unique proposition, then I've just whacked a QR code on there just so that it'd be lovely to connect with all you lovely people out there. But that's how to create a value proposition.
That's brilliant. No, that's really, really, really interesting, Gail, because you're absolutely right. You know, when businesses go out there and start marketing, they just think about what they want to sell, don't they? They don't really make that connection with their customers' wants, their customers' needs, their dreams and their pain points. So that's just I love the way you sort of mind map, the way you actually kind of turn it on its head and look at that why first of all, rather than at what you want to sell, but actually why your customers would want to buy it. Yeah, so it's really good. So how would you kind of flip that on the head? So, you know, how would you use your everyday value proposition that you've come up with? How would you sort of interpret that into, say, a social media post?
So using your value proposition, let's go back to that house analogy. You wouldn't start putting your pot plants in and your mirrors on the wall without making sure that your room has some basic foundations. Your value proposition is your basic foundation, and you need to get that in place. But once you've created your room and you've decided it's going to be a kitchen and not a bedroom, then you've got to make sure that you're using that with everything that you do. So it's almost like a checklist, a ready reckoner that, if you're posting something and it isn't reinforcing you as the authority in the space that you're occupying. I was working with another guy yesterday, who's the best and most effective recruiter for marketing and BD people in his specific market in the Northwest. Then don't waste your time posting, or change your post so that you're saying something that is much more relevant.
Right. Yeah.
Because that way everything that you're saying reinforces that and creates reasons to believe for your unique value proposition. So, if it's all about getting a speedy haircut, don't talk about taking ages and that calming, relaxing experience you want to be in out. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
But there are, again, it's all talking about you identifying those specific target segments and then talking to them, but using that value proposition so you don't kind of mix yourself up, because your same hairdresser could cut my hair and your hair, but give us a very different service. And her base proposition is, it's all about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's her base proposition. And then she can tailor it with specific value propositions for specific services aimed at specific customers. But her base thing is she really cares about customers and she gives them what they need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you work it into every piece of communication.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, that's been really interesting. So thank you, Gail. It's been an absolute pleasure. So do make sure I've put Gail's link to her LinkedIn. Do connect with her on LinkedIn. And if you need any more help and support. And Gail's just become our newest member of the social flock.
I'm so excited.
We're very excited. So for those of you that don't know, the social flock is our social media support group. So anyone who is struggling to create consistent content on social media, procrastinates too much about what they want to post on social media, or just needs some accountability on social media, the social flock provides content writing sessions every week where we come together and write our posts together, and also lots of ideas, training, these live streams. We run webinars, we have quarterly content planning sessions to make sure that you show up every week on your social media with your correct value proposition in your content, and just really help to keep visible. Because as Gail said at the beginning of her presentation, it really is a very competitive market, is social media. And if you're not consistent with your content each week, then you're just not going to get any visibility. So I'll put the details of the social flock in the chat. Again, it's only £45 a month if you join for the year. And we would love to welcome you to the social flock. I'd like to say a huge thank you again to Gail. Thank you so much for today. It's been really, really interesting. And again, if you're watching this on catch up, please do give us a thumbs up and ask us any questions in the comments below, and we'll happily get back and answer those as well if you've got any questions about how you go about this or how Gail can help. Now, there won't be a live stream next week, as I will be whizzing down the slides in Centre Parks with all my squash buddies, but I will be back in 2 weeks' time. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon. And Paul says he loves the cow picture. I know we've got cows and sheep today.
It's a Caroline Shotton, plug for Caroline Shotton.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
So yes, we have a farm today. Thanks, Paul. All right then. See you all soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.